Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. It's such an honor and a pleasure being able to record the Lift Your Legacy podcast. And if you're also getting value from this podcast, please consider supporting an episode. We at Lift Your Legacy are working very hard to turn out weekly, high-value content and would love your support. So for sponsoring an episode or for advertising, please email rabbirupp@gmail.com, rabbirupp@gmail.com. Is there a spiritual path to weight loss? I am thrilled to have clinically licensed psychotherapist Mrs. Mia Adler Ozair on today. We discuss body image. We discuss how do you relate to your spouse, married people and body image issues, how to spiritually go through a weight loss process, how do you become healthy, how do you navigate the challenges that a lot of us who are Jewish, Orthodox Jewish, have, being surrounded by a culture that celebrates a lot of elements of food, etc. And how do you feel happy in your body? So I'm thrilled to have her on. One of the things that we come out with in our conversation is the importance of bringing in outside help. So both for Mrs. Ozair and myself, if you want to reach out, if you want someone to help out, to talk through these issues, please don't hesitate to reach out. Oftentimes, the best that we can come up with isn't the best because it's just our opinions. So the more that you can bring in experts and people that know more and kind of see a broader image of this, the better. So with that being said, I encourage you to enjoy this episode and not to hesitate to reach out if this is something that you're actually working on. And you'll start us off by just telling us a little bit about how you made that jump, I guess, initially into wanting to help in the realm of psychotherapy, and then why you have subsequently shifted into health and wellness.
Okay, so I mean, the whole shift into psychotherapy started many years ago. So that was like a 20 years ago shift. I had been an educator, administrator, so forth. And then I decided I kind of wanted to get more into the supporting the human experience type of world. And so then I went in for my master's and I got clinically licensed. And so since that time, I've been working in the realm of, clinical psychotherapy. And I developed, kind of two passions. One was in the realm of women's wellness, and then the other is in the realm of working with Jewish couples, marriage issues, dating, things like that. So the first is still a part of my kind of overall purview in terms of working the world of health and wellness. And then the second is really more passion projects. So most of that I do, I'll speak in synagogues. I speak at Eshet Torah a lot here in LA. I'll do Passover programs, things like that.
When did you feel that going into health and wellness was the next step for you, that it wasn't enough, so to speak, to be working with one-on-one with couples, or that it was incomplete what you were doing in the world of mental health with women?
You want to know the absolute truth?
Yes.
When I was like 12 years old.
No
joke.
What do you mean?
Meaning I've known from a very young age that I have just this deep passion about health and wellness. And even from a very, very young age, I had an appreciation for and understanding that every single facet of our lives impacts our wellness. And so from a very young age, I started studying spirituality. I started studying, within and outside the context of Judaism, like all different models. I started studying about the body. I got certified as a personal trainer. I did all of these different things. And so I feel like where I stand today is kind of the culmination of all of these different loves and interests and things that I've studied over the years. And they all now fit into this big umbrella that we call health and wellness.
So when you were starting in, I guess you could say, as being certified as a personal trainer, you saw that as distinct. And I don't know how you grew up, if you grew up observant or not, but did you see that as paralleling Jewish practice?
So I grew up in a conservative household. So I was not as observant as I am now. But, I never thought about it in any way, one way or the other. I just knew that having a good relationship with your body was important. And the irony of that is that from, let's say, the time I entered into college and then got married and started having children, I'm very blessed. I've had 5 children. So my oldest is just turning 21 and my youngest is 5. So I have the whole gamut, right? And, this is a part of one of the things that I have to teach from personal experience is that over the course of that time, so we're looking at over 20 years, I've gained and lost over 400 pounds, right? And this is this is 5 pregnancies, this is college, this is, whatever you want, whatever our life path is. And I guarantee you, I'm not the only one. If people really sit down and they think about how many times they've gone on a diet and they yo-yoed and they gain it back and whatever is the reason, the numbers add up very, very quickly. And that whole path and that whole process, the entire time, me knowing that fitness was important, right? And yet I wasn't always fit. There's a very big difference between what we're intellectually capable of wrapping our minds around versus what we are capable of applying into our daily lives and living. Because having a commitment, and this is again a part of my teachings, is that it's not just about losing weight, right? It's about understanding and building a relationship with oneself so that these things become ingrained in daily living, knowing to move your body. I almost hate to say exercise because everyone's like, oh, I don't have time for exercise. Or it becomes like this chore on the list of things to do every day, right? But if you think about it in terms of movement, you need to move your body, whatever that looks like for you. It's important, and to just figure out how you like to do that on a daily basis and caring about what you put in your mouth, so it's been a journey. And today I feel like I sit in a position of having gone through all of that personally, having educated myself professionally, and I'm kind of trying to bring it all together now so that I can really help people on a much broader scale to achieve that sense of satisfaction and happiness.
So I want to delve in a little bit on that concept. And I work with men primarily, or couples. And so, we'll kind of see if there is a crossover or not.
Sure.
But to what extent do you feel that one's physical activity and what they're eating plays into the spiritual relationship and very brass tacks, like you're a psychotherapist, like into the happiness of the relationship itself? If they're not active and they don't feel good about themselves, how is that going to impact? Is that not going to impact? Should we just sort of accept, each other as we are, accept ourselves as we are, or like, is there more that we have to do?
Yes and yes. So to answer your last question first, should we accept ourselves as we are? 100%, but that doesn't mean that we should not want something better or more or different for ourselves, right? So there's to judge oneself in a negative way and to beat oneself up over, oh, I ate that, or I did that, or I gained 5 pounds, or whatever. This is useless. This is a total waste of energy. It just doesn't accomplish anything, right? Nothing productive. So absolutely, one needs to accept oneself and love oneself in one's current position, because it is the whole previous series of moments up until this very moment that have created who you are on every level. So how can you possibly say that you won't love yourself and that you're going to discount your entire history, right? We don't want to do that, of course. And yet, to go to one of your original questions, about the spirituality and peace, I believe those are 100% intricately linked. And that's not just from a physiological standpoint, that's from a spiritual standpoint, that's in Judaism, that's in the texts, that we literally do become, we are what we eat. And so I feel like I'm going to get a little technical here on the spiritual level, but it's pulling from my studies from before. But our soul, right, that which animates us, and that itself has many different levels. But on the base level, the way that our soul integrates with our body is literally fuses on a cellular level. And so everything the body experiences resonates between the physical body and the spiritual soul, that we are. And so there's no way to have something impact the body and not impact the soul, and vice versa. That's why when we experience emotional trauma, much of that settles into the cells of the body, and we wind up with pain, or we wind up with weight gain, or we wind up with illness, God forbid. So in my opinion, just based on what I've seen and studied, those things are very, very tight, almost one and the same.
One of the strange things, though, I think within the Jewish world as a whole, and something that I think we're getting a little bit better at, but I feel like it's still very much not talked about, is this idea of how one should relate to their physical body. I became observant also, but one of the things I remember learning about Hanukkah was that, like, the difference between the Greeks and the Jews, the Greeks worship the body, and the Jews are combine the soul and the body, and the Greeks would run out of their worship, and the Jews that were affected would go to the gym. And I think that has somewhat created this paradigm shift within our own culture where it is seen as negative. So how should we as Jewish people relate to either that desire, to look good? Is that okay? Besides just feeling healthy, are we supposed to feel like we should look good? Do we want our spouses to look good? Or is that something that's kind of a borrowing from the culture that we live in?
No, okay, this is an amazing question. It's actually extremely complicated. But let's touch on some of the aspects of it. The body, in the context of spirituality in general, but let's just talk about it in the context of Judaism, right? So we are gifted with this body at birth, right? God tells us, get into that body, and we have to get into that body, right? And we have to make do with this body from birth until death. This is what we're gifted. And so the idea of caring for this body, let's take it separate and apart from aesthetics for the moment, is really actually mandated. We must care for our body. It's been a gift given to us. It's the only vehicle we have through which to do our work on this planet, whatever that work is. We are actually, as spiritual beings, more powerful within the physical body while we're in this physical world. And so for us to want to take care of the body and to be healthy and to be strong simply means that we have that much more of an understanding about why we're here and why we're in this body, because without it, we can't really accomplish anything in this world, right? So from that standpoint, of course, there is a huge mandate to want to care for oneself and keep oneself. In fact, if you really want to learn a lot about it, you go into the Rambam. I actually have his book right over here, and he goes into it in huge detail about caring for the body and what you should eat and not eat and foods to avoid being together. I mean, he goes way, way into it. If you take it a step further to the aesthetic piece of it, and you ask the question, well, should we want to look good? Should we not? So, this is a much bigger conversation that has to do more with like snoot and modesty and all of those kinds of things. There is nowhere in any of the texts that said a woman should make herself ugly. This does not exist in fact, it's exactly the opposite. There is mandate that a woman should want to make herself beautiful for her husband, and that the husband also should keep himself nicely for the wife, right? And obviously that's tying to my other subject matter of marriage, right? They're kind of intricately linked, that, when you are keeping up for each other, there is a whole lot less likelihood of wanting to look elsewhere because you're caring about yourself in the context of the relationship, and that's a fluid and dynamic process. So what's great for one couple at the beginning of the marriage might shift. They might decide that, the looking one way is great now, but in the future, no, let's do it this way. You know how it is in your observance. It's an ebb and a flow.
A dance.
It's a dance. It is a dance. And when you're dancing in a marriage, you're not dancing alone. So the feelings of the other person matter, right? So
that's crazy and highly controversial, although I completely agree with it. But I think would start this conversation, I guess it depends on who you're talking to and where you're starting off. But I think that most people would conventionally say that, your health is your deal. And I'm curious, in your practice, would you start a conversation with a couple and say that really it should matter what your spouse, again, I think I'm completely socialized by the culture that we live in. So I feel like I'm dancing around something that should be patently obvious to most people, but it's an interesting concept to think to yourself, like, no, your spouse is actually supposed to care because of what you think. It's not just about you and your health, but someone else kind of is relying on you to stay attractive. Is that nuts?
Not just attractive, healthy, active. I mean, again, like all couples have different levels of their engagement. Some couples love to go hiking while other couples love to just sit on the couch next to each other and read, right? So it's kind of like, if you have a match, if partner A and partner B love to do the same things, then fantastic. If you have one partner that loves to go hiking and the other one who likes to sit and read, so either there are compromises made and one time you're doing one thing and one time you're doing the other, or they're both pretty cool with one going and doing one thing and one doing the other, you know? Again, every couple is so unique, just like every human being is so unique. So I think that, you know, I'll just speak in my own marriage, you know, my husband and I have been on our own journey towards health and wellness. And, you know, kind of once he saw me starting to get more in shape and healthy and feeling good, you know, he really took interest in that, not from the standpoint of like, wow, honey, you look great, but from the standpoint of like, he saw, I feel good. I'm in a better mood. I have more energy. I jump out of bed in the morning, you know? And when he started really exercising and watching what he eat, he suddenly, not only did he drop weight, you know, that he was extra weight he was carrying around, but he suddenly felt great. You know, he was able to go and tackle his day and do his studies and do his, you know, exercise and whatever. And he had the physical resources to do that. So that made him a happier person.
It was funny. I have lost 100 pounds. I didn't have any pregnancies,
Wow.
so I can't. You beat me. But my first big weight drop when I met my wife, because I hopefully you'll tap and discuss this a little bit about how our childhood senses of self and how we grew up affects us as adults. But I was always the fat kid, and then when that tremendously impacted and essentially destroyed my confidence to talk to women as I got older. And when I met my wife, I don't know, she doesn't even remember this, but she remembers meeting me, but she doesn't remember. She gave me a bag of candy for some reason. And I thought to myself, I finally found someone that kind of loves me for what I look like. And I right away on the spot put on 40 pounds very quickly. And then it wasn't until she went to Spain where I was like, oh my gosh, like all the Spanish guys are skinny. I don't know. I don't know what I base that on, but I ended up losing weight. So it's interesting, but my entire weight loss journey was largely affected by my spouse and my desire, even though she never articulated that. I wanted to feel like I had a chance to compete. So I'm not sure if that's healthy or unhealthy. I'm kind of curious your thoughts about that.
You know, I think that it's a good question. I'm not sure if I have a solid answer for that one. I mean, obviously it worked well for you, right? It got you to be in a really great place. It got you to lose weight and you feel good and healthy. You know, I think it's a fine line when we do things for other people. I mean, I don't get the sense from what you're telling me that like you did the entire thing for her. Like you did it for you because you wanted to feel good in her presence. You wanted to feel like you had a fighting chance, so to speak, in her presence, right? You know? So it was really more a matter of you wanting to show up well in the relationship and show up in the best way for yourself and show up in the best way for her. So that's a very healthy way to do it. If you're losing weight or trying to change kind of the way you do stuff because somebody's bullying you into it, saying nasty things to you, putting you down and trying to force your hand, that's obviously not a healthy situation. That it's also not a healthy relationship, not one that I would encourage staying in, you know? But again, the idea is when you're in relationship with someone, whether it's marriage or dating or whatever, is that, you know, if the other person brings the best out in you, in whatever way that is, you know, becoming more kind, becoming more charitable, becoming physically more active, becoming more healthy. So then that's a relationship worth keeping because you understand that the two of you, whatever that dynamic is that's playing out, is working in a positive direction. You know,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, talk to me a little bit about what you had mentioned was it's not just about, okay, let's go on a diet, let's just, you know, eat healthy, but really what you do with your clients is to talk about how it's kind of like more all encompassing and kind of an expression of how you love yourself.
Exactly. So my approach to, so I know, I don't remember if we said this while we were live or before the thing, but so in addition to being a clinical psychotherapist, I'm a certified health coach and I'm also a certified weight management specialist. So my whole approach to the idea of weight and weight loss is I think very different than the traditional model. So I approach it that when someone has weight to lose, you know, it doesn't matter if it's 10 pounds or 100 pounds. That process is all about creating a relationship with oneself. It's all about finding out what led you to where you are today. You know, why did you gain the weight to begin with? Or had you always been heavy or what? Like you were saying, maybe childhood stuff, you don't know. And then caring enough to love yourself for who you are now and to develop that understanding about yourself in that relationship so that you do want to incorporate movement. You do want to eat well for yourself because you care about yourself the way that you would care about your child and want to feed your child healthy food because you love them, right? Or the way that you would give an ailing parent medicine because they need it. I mean, when you're operating from a place of love, then you're doing things out of kindness and care. And unfortunately, in our culture, especially for women, because there's so much pressure and we have such a skewed understanding of what is beauty, you know, what should we look like? Why is there only one size that matters? You know, we have to kind of take a step back from that and reclaim ownership and redefine it for ourselves. What does it mean to feel or look beautiful? What does it mean to feel healthy? You know, it may not be the weight that is in the medical weight charts. You know, maybe somebody wants to be more muscular and strong and fit. Well, someone else wants to be lean. Again, it's such a personal idea. But again, weight loss in general, or I prefer to look at it as developing a healthy lifestyle, is, you know, weight loss becomes the side effect of living well. It becomes the side effect of caring enough about yourself to create and build a healthy life.
So then the obvious question is, and this I think is, you know, something like 70%, you probably know the numbers better than me, but 70% of America is overweight.
Yes.
And I think that within the Jewish world, obviously on one end, there's a tremendous amount of issues that deal with, you know, with people being underweight, especially as you mentioned with women in the dating market and everything like that. But also I look around, you know, and at men, and because we're quote living well, pretty much everyone is fat, if that makes sense. So do you diagnose, and I know it's an individual thing, but if you were going to speak kind of as in general, are you diagnosing and looking at the society, the Jewish society that we're in today, where there is so many issues? Is it because we've misunderstood what it means to live well? Or are we doing it because we just generally don't care about ourselves and we have this negative self-esteem?
Okay. So, again, complex question. I love your questions. So there's the broader population, right? That, like you said, the numbers are crazy. The number of people who are overweight and obese are the highest they've ever been, and really are not showing any signs of slowing. I think that there are a few different factors attributing to that. I think one of the top factors is that our entire food offerings, at least in America, and I know that the World Health Organization has actually claimed obesity as one of the number one top health concerns, epidemics in the world. So we know it's not just the United States, but let's just talk about the United States for right now. Our entire food selection has essentially been inundated with processed sugar. So anyone who follows me, follows, you know, my platform knows that I have like a group that's called Sugar is the Devil. And, you know, and I'm really just trying to bring attention to the fact that our bodies were not designed to digest and use processed sugar. That's very different than fruit sugars. I'm talking about just the stuff that's dumped in there because it's cheap and it's a filler. And we've all become addicted to that sweetness, and our taste buds have been manipulated by the food industry. And so we all crave that, right? So in general, you have to work very hard as a citizen in this country and think very carefully when you go shopping in order to avoid participating in that dynamic of what the food industry is providing for us. You have to be educated consumer in order to avoid that. When you want to talk about the Jewish community in particular, I think that we are faced with some extraordinary challenges, and I'll tell you what those are. They're called Shabbat and Chagim. Okay, because for those, I don't know if you have any non-Jewish viewers. I know on my page I have several non-Jewish viewers, but the Sabbath, which happens once a week, and the holidays, which happen sprinkled throughout the year, is basically like eating a Thanksgiving dinner once a week and then several times a day during the holidays.
I had this dream of bringing over one of my trainers and being like, just having, he's not Jewish, and I just said, come down, I want you to like sit for 5 minutes in my life and see what would happen.
Exactly. So, you know, and it's as someone who's had to go through the process of restricting on Shabbat and on the holidays when it is so much fun to eat and there's such good food, you know, it's a challenge. It's really hard. And, you know, the people that I'm working with my clients who are Orthodox and who, you know, observe, and even people who are not Orthodox, who are eating Shabbat dinner every week, it's the same story. You know, they'll lose weight during the week. And then, you know, you just enjoy your Shabbat, Friday night dinner, Saturday lunch. And the next thing you know, everything you lost during the week is back on. And then you wind up in this cycle. And so, while you're in what I call the weight loss phase, there are certain things you have to sacrifice and certain decisions you have to make until you get to the place where you want to be in a maintenance phase, at which point you can then kind of once again be a little bit more indulgent and maintain your weight.
So let's just get granular for 1 second. So walk us through, let's say I want to lose weight. Let's say I have this tremendous, and I think so much of it is that psychological dependency that it's not Shabbat unless you're so stuffed and you've had it's like my Judaism's going to go out the window because, I didn't consume 100,000 calories over here.
Right.
So what does it look like? How would you advise someone like, what are we eating on the holidays to keep within our plan, but, still kind of fulfill it? What do you do?
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I can tell you what I do. I don't think it's what most people would want to do. For myself personally, I know that if I'm in a phase of needing to kind of drop some weight or what I'm really watching, I'm not having the challah. I'm skipping the desserts. I'm making sure that whatever salads are on the table are ones that don't have processed, added sugar in them. I'm sticking to the lean proteins. I'm sticking to the vegetables. I'm sticking to the whole grains, the complex carbohydrates, all those things that we know that when we put in our body knows how to utilize them and is going to use them to the maximum benefit. And so you're going to end up in the end, using all that food, and burning those calories, and if you're exercising, it's even easier because then you at least have a little bit of a calorie deficit that you can indulge with.
And can you just say it so it's really clear? I think that it's important for people to hear you've done both, and it is possible that you don't feel like your Judaism is shot because you have a healthy Shabbat.
No, you'll definitely want to sit and eat the table. I mean, it's not easy to sit there with 20 other people who are feasting, and you're kind of like, oh, this is a delicious piece of
broccoli.
Green bean or broccoli, exactly. But you have to look at it like it's temporary. It really is. Again, when you're in the weight loss phase, there are sacrifices you have to make. You have to decide that one thing is more important than what something else tastes like at that given moment, right? But again, when you get to the maintenance phase, when you get to the place where you're good and you feel good and you're okay, you can eat a meal. You can have a good, I wouldn't gorge, but you can have the challah and you can have those things. Once or twice a week. So if you stick to it on Shabbat and the rest of the week, you're, really tight with your healthy eating, I think you'll be okay, but when you're in a position of needing to lose weight, I'll tell you, for me, when I lost kind of my last bit of weight that I needed to lose, a little while ago, the one thing I finally had to give up that I didn't want to give up and I was holding on to it for dear life was wine. I love to have a glass of wine with my husband on Shabbat dinner, and I just wasn't dropping those last few pounds. And when I finally decided, okay, you know what, I gotta break through. I just gotta do it. And so for like a month, I gave up drinking wine or any alcohol, and that was it. I did it, and that was it. I finished. I got to where I need to be, and now I'm able to have a glass of wine once a week, and it doesn't affect me.
And you're saying that's probably because you're active in watching yourself. So you need to make those moments of sacrifice. But then once you're there, if you are kind of watching what you're eating and maintaining and exercising, so then it's not so necessary to keep like swearing stuff off forever, which I think is a very big concern.
Yeah. Listen, there are certain things that I do try to just regularly keep out of my diet. Processed sugars, I really do try to avoid at all costs, simply because not only do they really screw up with your insulin production and your retention of fat, and your cravings and so forth, but it's just not healthy. It's just not healthy. But again, once a week on a Shabbat dinner or whatever, you can do it. You can do it. Your body can handle that little bit, when you're having every single day, your cappuccino, frappuccino, whatever you're having, and your ice cream and your cakes and your cookies and your lollipop and your Tootsie Rolls at work and whatever your thing is that you have in the candy bowl, it's when we're constantly giving our body this hard work of trying to figure out, what do I do with this substance? So then it throws everything else off, and it doesn't allow our body to actually, to really digest the good food that we're putting in there, because it's like putting sugar in your gas tank of your car. You would never do it, or sand or whatever, because eventually the engine's going to stop running.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to be cognizant of your time. So I have two other questions. I have a bunch more, but I feel like these are crucial to understand. So if you are working with a person that wants to lose weight, and you're going to take this approach of loving yourself and that you want to love yourself, and a person says, look, my whole life, like I've loved myself by eating bad foods when I'm stressed out. When the kids are screaming, you know, I have my face stuffed in cupcakes and then I feel a little bit better. What would you tell them about loving themselves and how to love themselves in order for them to make different decisions?
Okay. So I'm actually in the process of creating an entire online product about this because this is the heart of it, right? This is how do we shift from being where we are and being stuck in our current patterns to being something, someone, someplace new. And the truth of the matter is it all comes down, you know, we are all a product of our minuscule, tiny daily decisions that then become ingrained in the wiring of our brain and become habits. And we wind up living from our unconscious patterning, and literally the neurology of it, the neurological patterning in our brain holds us there. And we're designed that our brains, the responses protect us from change because change is viewed as something fearful. And to be feared, it's the fight or flight, right? So this process, what I would say to someone in that position is that you have to understand Rome was not built in a day. This situation did not create itself in a day. What takes time to do takes time to undo. And there's no getting around it. There's just no getting around it. And there's no easy way. And anyone who's telling you that there's an easy way to do it is lying to you. They're selling you something. You know, it takes daily conscious engagement and commitment to loving oneself and practice. You know, loving someone, it's like choosing to be in a marriage. You have to wake up every day and say, I choose this. I choose this person as my partner. I choose to be here, regardless of how crazy they're making me, right? I choose it. And when you choose it, when you make it a conscious decision, then everything becomes more manageable. It's when we fall into kind of this unconscious victim mentality and victim mode that this is being done to me. And again, I always have to say when it comes to marriage, I'm not talking about domestic abuse situations. So I always have to say that those situations are completely different. But in general, in a normal, quote unquote, normal relationship, or a normal way of trying to get healthy and living well, it has to be waking up in the morning, saying thank you for whatever you're thankful for, and reissuing your commitment to what it is your goals are and to what you want to do that day and what healthy choices you want to make and how you want to feed your relationships. How do you want to feed your body? How do you want to feed your profession? How do you want to feed the love for yourself? And it's flexing muscles the same way that we work out our muscles and we have to break the tissue down and build it up more and practice to get better at something is the same way you have to practice loving yourself and the same way you have to practice showing up every day in a relationship. You know, these are not things we're born naturally knowing how to do. It takes practice and dedication.
That's so powerful. And the last question, besides, you know, how do people find you and follow you and keep up with everything that you have, is, you know, you were saying that there's a tremendous fear that we have just of changing our roles. And I know that's I know in male psychology, that's highly problematic, and we have our system, and the system gets messed up, and women as well. But also that there's this tremendous fear of other people, you know, specifically if you've been in a marriage where you guys are just kind of eating whatever you want. And it's like you said, it's not simple when you say, I'm not going to have any wine anymore, because it's not just the wine. It was the connection you had with your husband, or
it's true.
You know what I'm saying? Like that. So how do you navigate or advise people to navigate not only the change of pattern within themselves, but that, you know, that terror, I guess you have of upsetting or changing, or like, now what am I going to do with my buddies if I don't drink beer or drink scotch with them, you know, or drink wine with my husband, you know?
This is a really, really, I think what you're touching on right now is a big reason why a lot of people wind up gaining their weight back or kind of falling back into old habits and old patterns, because we are used to what we're used to, and what's familiar is comfortable, and anything that's unknown is uncomfortable and generally feared. Right? So we naturally, as human beings, have a fear of the unknown. What will happen if I drop 50 pounds and I suddenly look amazing? What kind of attention am I going to get from other people? How will my husband react? How will my kids react? What does it mean if I have to make 2 different dinners because my kids don't want to eat what I need to eat in order to do, like you said about giving up the wine? My husband would be like, really? You're not going to have a glass of wine with me? I'm like, just not for a few weeks. Just hang in there. Eventually I will again, you know? And of course he was understanding. But this is, it's key, because everything in the whole world is vibration. everything is energy. And so each one of us is emitting a certain energy, vibration. Those are laws of attraction. Why are we attracted to certain people? Why do certain people show up in our life? Why do certain circumstances show up in our lives? Because we emit a certain vibration, and that vibration goes out into the world and then attracts to us a mirror reflection of what we're putting out, right? So when you start to change and you begin to shift your vibration, and you kind of get it so that it's really starting to get some traction and take hold, you can't be surprised when it's going to upset the apple cart. Or maybe you're going to lose some friends, but new friends are going to come who maybe are more supportive. Or maybe there's a shift in the dynamic between spouses and, you know, what's valued and what activities are engaged in. Or maybe that shift uncovers underlying issues in the marriage that have been sitting there all this time unnoticed because nobody made any changes. And so now those are rising to the surface and need to be dealt with. So I think that when you make a commitment to change of any kind, you have to expect that the universe will respond in kind, you know, and you have to trust that if you're going at it with good intention, that that good things will be coming, even though it may be difficult to kind of get through that storm. But I always say the sun is always shining on the other side, you know, of the clouds. So so you just got to give it. You got to give it all. Give it your all.
Please tell us where people can find you. How do we get a hold of you?
I have a Facebook page. I have a personal one and a public page. So you can find me. It's just my name, Mia Adler Ozair. And you can follow there. I have a Twitter. It's also at Mia Adler Ozair. And then I have a website. It's just also my name, miaadlerozair.com. And all of my services, I do a 90-minute, you know, health and wellness boot camp with people to kind of really like do an overview on everything that they do, and other classes and things like that I offer.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.